It's a staple food for people all over the world. Smothered in butter and jelly, or dipped in gravy, it's a delicious treat that's hard to resist. And we're willing to bet you can't resist the opportunity to find out what goes into the making of your daily bread. Multigrain bread is made from several ingredients such as flaxseed, buckwheat, soy, and multigrain bread. This protective grill prevents any ingredients from crawling back up the container to escape their fate. The recipe calls for a half a ton of flour, which is locked inside with the other mix-ins, forcing them to become friends as bread or die as a burned pile. We begin by finding the best carb coffin that we can for our bread. These giant troughs are the perfect place for the dough to rise, and to pay respect to the loaves that have fallen before us. The dough rising normally takes hours, but thanks to television magic, only takes seconds. I wish I could have done the same thing with my divorce proceedings. This huge mixer needs the dough just like I need a better divorce lawyer. When the dough finally gets super goopy, an officially mustached man scoops the dough into a large tub. The dough is afraid of heights, and urinates on itself just a little bit as it's dumped onto a slide. Then it's on to the batter bitch slapper. Two bitch-slapping arms form two lines of dough while simultaneously teaching the dough its place. The dough pieces are then rolled into balls, the familiar shape of bread. Everyone loves to use the common phrase, "Hey, pass me a ball of bread, why don't ya?" The dough balls are sprinkled with powdered anime to infuse them with optimism before they're whipped by a drawbridge stolen from the Legends of the Hidden Temple. Then the bread is flattened into pancakes because our editor screwed up with our footage again. The dough is then rolled to teach it a valuable skill in case an enemy sniper opens fire. The dough is rolled to the perfect size to fit into these molds that are shaped to the exact size of exactly rolled out dough. Here we see them making bread for kids' meals. These smaller portions of carbs will be shipped out to fast food restaurants around the country for use in their kids' meals. If a loose nut or bolt lands in the batch, it will ship with toy included. These machines were originally created for a German metal band's music video from the mid-2000s. Meanwhile, these hot dog rolls are being spanked. It's not that they were naughty, they just paid extra for this. The hot dog pieces must not touch one another, so Wolverine from the X-Men helps in separating them. Well, that was weird. Back to the multigrain bread. Somehow, perhaps through magic, the dough rises to fill the entire mold. Then the dough is baked at 420 degrees for about weed joke minutes. A vacuum system gives the loaves a good sucking, and then they're placed into a large conveyor where they're sucked off. Bread traffic is then directed across the bread highway, which has notoriously awful traffic because of all the bread tourists and loaves of bread driving like they're the most important loaf of bread on the road. Then it's on to the slicer, which is the best thing since... I feel like I had a good analogy for this. It's the best thing since... It's the best thing since bread that you don't need to slice yourself. Yeah, something like that, yeah. Sliced loaves are now packaged and ready to hit store shelves. Just in time for you to go to the store and realize they've already sold out of that specific kind of bread you like. Donuts used to be called oily cakes because they were deep fried in pork fat. They were ball-shaped when Dutch pilgrims brought them to America, but then someone found that removing a nut from the center helped them cook far more evenly. And so, the donut was born. The average American consumes 2 donuts per day. Maybe even up to 3 if you could stand to lose a few pounds. To make cake donuts, batter drops from a mixer into boiling water, being shaped by a nozzle as it passes through. The bubbles from the water cook the donuts for about 1.5 minutes until a conveyor carries them out of the bath to cool. Donuts made from yeast, however, are far more complicated. A high-speed mixer works some yeast dough until a worker depressingly sags it into bins. From there, it goes onto a hopper that extrudes the dough as a sheet. Then it's onto another conveyor belt, which leads the dough into a steamroller. The roller applies steam to the dough as it presses it to help cook the dough evenly, thus the name steamroller. Next, the dough passes under a shower of old donut crumbs, recycled for factory use, to give the donuts more volume and texture. Then it hits a rotating flavor cylinder, which simultaneously rolls the dough into a log and smashes it full of the recipe's required sugars and spices. A small pipe sprinkles the dough with water, so it stays reasonably wet during the next section, the dry roller, which is a steamroller without any steam. A dusting of donut powder keeps the dough from turning into bagels as an industrial blade slices through it. A retractable arm drops the donuts 4 at a time onto a wire mesh tray. Most of the donuts are bleeding from their wounds, enhancing their flavor. Then it's off to a machine called a proofer, which raises and lowers the donuts to show the symbiotic relationship between product and consumer. Meanwhile, at a nearby theme park, the inflatable rafts enter the water. Gas burners boiling the water and a large metal flipper make this the world's most unpleasant water park ride. Back at the factory, the donuts have now been fried and are soaked in a solution of liquid calories. Hair dryers at the end of the cycle blow off the excess coating. But let's face it, Tubby, you don't need all of that. They gradually cool as they spiral around the production area and head off to packaging. Filled donuts are handled a bit differently. Once out of the fryer, they hilariously tumble around a Whirlpool brand dryer filled with powdered sugar. Then, workers use nozzles to inject jam and other fillings into the donuts. Or they don't. It really all depends on how they feel. Most of the time, they spend all day arguing if donut is spelled D-O-U-G-H-N-U-T or D-O-N-U-T. The world may never know. Millions of pizzas travel daily from the frozen food section of the supermarket to the dinner table. Thick or thin crust, meat or vegetarian, their convenience makes them a staple in the freezer. But how do they end up tasting so fresh when they start out so frozen? Cheese, sausage, sausage with carrots, and deluxe. All varieties of pizzas require a maze of machines. To make the dough for the crust, they combine flour, salt, cornmeal, water, yeast, and flour in a large mixer. Then they add a bit of cornmeal for flavor. A mixer turns the ingredients for about 4 minutes. This powerful machine needs almost 30 horsepower to knead the dough. The dough rises into a plump dough anus until it's fed into a chunking machine, which divides the blob into smaller pieces. The chunks travel to a sheeting machine which rolls them into 2.5 centimeter thick sheets. A light dusting of flour makes the dough 2.507 centimeters thick, so the company can eventually save costs when selling in bulk. A flour brush tickles the dough to get it to drop its defenses as it's eviscerated by stainless steel rotating spikes. The holes will make the pizza dough faster through production. A large plastic roller cuts the dough into circular pizza crust shapes. Fun fact, this roller is never ever washed, and our cameraman had a cold today. A machine called the Divorce-O-Matic separates the dough. The pizza crusts are given a spray tan to make them more appetizing and to try to slow the effects of aging. Some pizzas stick to the ceiling. Science cannot explain this. Next stop is the tomato sauce waterfall. This waterfall is the only one of its kind in the world, except for all the others found in other pizza-making factories, and anywhere else that someone decides to build one. In fact, most researchers would call this a kid-shitty science fair project more than anything, and would give it a C-. Mounds of cheese fluff are ready to be shredded to add mozzarella cheese topping. Factories want you to believe this is called a cheese applicator machine, but we all know it's just a cheese waterfall. Are you surprised? Most pizzas today are built via waterfall. Okay, seriously, I'm reading the script here and they want to call this thing a meat applicator. Read my lips that you can't currently see. Meat waterfall. Call it what it is, and stop lying to these people. The pizza is now ready to be fed to a computer. The combination of citric acids, salts, and complex topping arrangements make them the perfect snack food for processor-based organisms. The pizzas enter a flash freezer called a blast cell, which sounds like the name of a rejected Batman villain. An overwrapping machine applies a layer of plastic to each pizza. Some people choose to remove this flavor plastic before eating, but this is up to the consumer. The sun god is consulted for final judgment on all pizzas. Any he deems unworthy are blown away to pizza hell. And finally, an automated arm pushes each pizza into a box, making you one step closer to your dinner of disappointing greasy cardboard. By the late 1960s, fishermen just couldn't keep up with the growing global demand for shrimp. This gave birth to commercial shrimp farming. Most shrimp farms are located near the sea, for access to salt water. The greatest producer of farm shrimp is Asia, with Thailand being the largest exporter. Shrimp hatcheries raise these breedable shrimp offspring through 3 larval stages, then sell them to shrimp farms which ironically grow them to jumbo size. As this model demonstrates, the shrimp start out as fish, living in a series of treatment ponds. Then, in the Jigarerge, the treated water metamorphosizes the fish into shrimp. These shrimp here are about 2,000 years old. Shrimp farms start with workers watering the soil to help the shrimp grow. The farm is flooded with seawater because immediately after sprouting, shrimp crops require water to survive, or they will reverse drown. Plant matter and fish feces often float to the top of these farms, and is left on top to help flavor the shrimp before processing. A pump transfers water from one part of the farm to another, while simultaneously blasting the baby shrimp from the hatchery into the jet stream, to act as the first part of their life gauntlet. Round 2 of their life gauntlet is these giant flappers. The shrimp must navigate their way through these obstacles to become strong enough to be eaten. Meanwhile, in a nearby meth lab, the water from the pond is being monitored for trace amounts of hydrogen and oxygen. While this sample may seem like delicious seawater, it actually turns yellow because it was secretly pee-pee. This fun color chart lets you match your urine color to what percentage of shrimp you are. Try playing along at home. Please urinate on your monitor now. If you don't have the urge to urinate, perhaps this tall, cold glass of shrimp water will convince you. Once a week, a shrimp is skewered and butchered to have its liver extracted. This is to inspect for any damage, indicating the shrimp have become alcoholics, which make them taste terrible. The liver is put under a kaleidoscope so a technician can be mesmerized by its incredible colors and completely symmetrical patterns. The growing shrimp are fed a diet of mild juice, buffalo sickness, hobo soup, close-up hobo soup, garlic, close-up garlic, and brown television static. This worker is using a blender to prepare the shrimp's food as a smoothie. On special occasions, such as their birthday, they can have it pan-seared with a side of fingerling potatoes. The ingredients are mixed in a giant blue bucket because that's the current bucket the workers had on hand at the time. The shrimp are fed 24 times a day, at noon, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., and then 18 times at 6 p.m. Shrimp are pathetic creatures, and despite the constant feedings, never gain muscle mass or strength, which is why they're named after what people call you when you go to the gym. After 4 to 5 months, the shrimp are caught on an elevator of death, as a tiny basket on a rope is all it takes to end their meager little lives. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some shrimp water to drink. Soy sauce is a staple of Asian cuisine, used as both a condiment and cooking ingredient. Its roots are in the seasonings of ancient China. Today, you can buy artificial or chemically enhanced versions, but authentic soy sauce is all natural, and made the traditional way, by brewing soybeans and wheat. At this soy sauce factory, they make sauce out of soy, using just 4 primary ingredients and 1 mystery ingredient: soybeans, water, wheat, and yeast. They begin by pouring soybeans into a giant cooking pan and hosing them down so they can be transferred into a cooking bucket. to transfer them a second time into a cooking pan designed for soybeans. The lid is sealed and the beans are boiled. Meanwhile, the wheat is daintily swirled around to tickle it slightly. The wheat is forced through a mill, which cracks the grains into pieces. Uncracked wheat may be too strong for the soy saucing process and can result in a poisoned batch. When the soybeans are ready, their ashes are spread into a soybean coffin, as is tradition for these sorts of things. Chaz Goodrich here is in charge of vigorously shaking, burying, and stirring in the wheat. Then a dash of yeast is applied, alongside a loogie of saliva. The soybean coffins are loaded into a soybean morgue, which is open to the public for anyone to fondle. The corpses of the departed soybeans are stored until they reach 86 degrees, hot enough to kill any vengeful spirits that linger within. For the next stage, a brine is made out of sea salt and plastic-laced water. The black flakes in the mixture are unexplainable, but are left in for flavor. The mixture is tornadoed and then the soybean mix is added in using unwashed gloves, again for flavor. All of this is blended together, creating a lolicon, the Japanese word for soybean mash. Every day for 6 years, the sludge is uncovered and blended to help aerate it. This makes it easier to push the barrels around the factory because air is lighter than soy sauce. After 12 long years of fermentation, it looks like shit. But it tastes delicious, guys, I swear. No, really, it's good, I mean it, trust me. The slop is emptied onto a sheet of soy paper in a similar fashion to elephant diarrhea. Then it's time to pack up Big Ken's lunch for the day. Every day, Big Ken eats over 11 pounds of elephant diarrhea soy sauce. Wood is added for fiber. As the android from the Alien franchise applies a steel press to the mixture, pure soy juice comes out. The used-up soybean mash will later go on to feed poor cows and rich pigs across the countryside. In the most ingenious part of the process, the soy sauce is bottled. This makes sense, because when you go to your local grocery store, the employees don't just give you handfuls of soy sauce. They let you buy it in bottles instead. A plastic shrink wrap is melted onto the bottle so that children and pets can't have any of your delicious soy sauce. And finally, the soy sauce is ready and blah 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 blah. Yeah, we get it. Okay, great. Soy sauce, done, finished. We know how it's made. I only watched this segment so I could get to the good stuff that's later in this episode. Aw, yeah.